This program is brought to you by the Reeves Law Firm, www.reevesfirm.com.
Good evening, everyone. In the know. Tony Reeves, fired. Following the news in any way, shape, or form. No shortage of things to talk about. What does it mean? What will it bring? Is this a reality we simply have to accept? Tony Reeves, fired. Tony Reeves. Let's go ahead and get started.
People, when you're applying for disability benefits under the Social Security disability benefits process, the one thing that you have control over, there's a lot of times during this whole disability process that I tell people that it feels like you don't have control over your circumstances. But the one thing you really have control over is your credibility, your ability to present information to them in a manner that lends itself to be more believable. And you want Social Security to believe that you're as credible as possible. A few years ago, and actually I think I did it on my blog, so if you haven't had a chance, go check out www.reevesfirm.com and check out my blog entries and so forth. I did a blog talk called Credibility Killers. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted people to understand that the moment you do something to blow your credibility, you can't get it back. It's hard. Think about the times when your children are talking to you and you're like, the one thing you tell your children all the time is you say, if you don't do nothing else, don't lie to me. And the reason why is because you want to have free-flowing information from your child. I'm not a parent, so I don't want to presume anything. But a couple of reasons is, one, you want your children to be in a position where they feel comfortable providing you with a free flow of information. You don't want for them ever to withhold any information from you, because that might be information that might be detrimental to them, and you need to be able to correct it if necessary. Okay. Second of all, but here's probably the biggest thing psychologically that you have, is that you don't want your children to get into this practice of thinking that it's acceptable to distort the truth, because what the reality is that you teach your children that when you lie, there are consequences. And in some instances, when you're lying, those consequences can be great. Now, some people out here are going to say, are you trying to tell us not to lie, Attorney Reeves? We do know that. We got some sense. My apologies. I'm not trying to insult you. But the reality is that people find themselves in a unique situation where they're having to decide whether or not they have to reveal particular types of information to Social Security Administration. You'd be surprised the number of times I have people sending me emails telling me, check it. Do we need to tell them everything? Do I need to tell them about this, to tell them about that? And this is what I always tell people. Be mindful that at some particular point, and this is interesting because I think there's a gentleman on here who does a great job of response in terms of does a great job of responding here and so forth. I want to thank him for that. I think it's Ticks for Tots. I always screw up his name, so please forgive me. When you fill out the application, you swear basically an oath or affirmation that you're going to tell the truth. Now, most people don't realize that responsibility is not just when you fill the initial application. That's during the entire process. So you have a responsibility to keep Social Security informed about certain information relating to your case. Now, there are two types of situations where this situation pops up. It's when they ask you or when they don't ask you. Now, the asking one is a lot cleaner. Somebody asks you, have you worked before? I'm always going to tell them, have you worked since you applied for disability benefits? I always tell people, tell the truth, because the moment you don't, and it's something in your record indicates to the contrary, and then they call you on it, and you start doing the jig isn't right here, your credibility is blown. Okay, so it's easier in that particular situation, and I tell people you still have the power. You can explain your circumstances. Somebody says, hey, have you worked since you applied? Yes, I did. I did part-time work. I only did it for a week. I couldn't do it because I was having physical problems. I was doing it 3 to 4 hours a day. This is what I did. I just couldn't do it. That has so much more power than you realize, because one, you're being honest, you're being upfront, and more importantly, you're describing the fact that your limitations have greatly impacted your ability to do things. That's powerful. When you start playing the long game of, well, no, I haven't worked, and all of a sudden, well, what about this where you told your doctor you went back to work? Oh, yeah, well, that one. No, there's no caveat on situations like this. Either yes, you have, or yes, you have not. No, you have not. So that when they ask you, that's the cleaner one. The trickier one, this is where it gets a real trick, is circumstances where you're not sure if you need to, circumstances where you're not sure whether you need to, excuse me, somebody's sending me messages here, so that's why you're popping up. Where you have sensitive information and you're not sure should you share it. Well, what do you mean by that? Let's say, for instance, that you're going through the disability process, you're at the hearing level, and you decide to go back to work. And you've gone back to work. Do you need to get on the phone and call Social Security right there and then? And people, I tell people, you need to call them right there and then, like right when you, I say, are you working now? And you're like, well, no, I'm getting ready to. I say, okay, when you start working, and this is where it becomes tricky. It depends on different parts of the process. And people, if I haven't said this before, I'm going to say this a million times. If you have a situation where you have a representative and you're not sure if you should share information, call your representative and ask them. Ask them if that's information that you should get on the phone and call them. Save yourself the headache. But if you're by yourself and you're not sure, I'm always telling people, if you're not sure if you should share, share. When in doubt, defer. Make yourself look better as opposed to presenting this impression. Now, there are going to be people right now, I already know this, because the one thing I love about doing these videos is that I got a robust group of people who have no problems commenting to me when they're telling me I'm full of crap. Big ups to you. There are going to be people out there who are going to tell you that you don't need to run to the phone to call Social Security for every little thing. And I tell people, I'm not saying that you need, that's not what I'm saying. What I have found is that most people, under most circumstances, if they're not sure about a circumstance, if it's a situation you're not sure about, you probably should say something. And you're like, oh, just that simple. It's not trying to be sugarcoating or disrespectful, but most people, when they find themselves in a situation where they're like, okay, I wonder if I should say something, it's probably something you should say. If you're not sure, just remember, and this is the other thing that I tell people when you're talking about withholding information, because people are thinking, okay, well, is that really withholding if I have something that I'm not sure? I say, once again, it's that fine line. This is where you need to talk to a representative, but this is what I tell people. Don't look at the information you're provided in a vacuum. For instance, I've gone back to work. Should I tell Social Security? Going back to work is not that simple. How long have you been going? Has it been a month? Has it been a week? You're working full-time? You're working part-time? You're leaving work early? You're getting there late? You're calling in sick? You're having problems at the job? Is people helping you with your job? Does your doctor know that you're working? Does your employer know about the problems? Are you having accommodations? Are you working under on the books but not really working at all? Now you see where I've just rambled off about a good 10 different questions there? Because what happens is that a lot of times people think about information within a bubble. They think of it from the overarching fact, but they don't think about it from the specifics of the situation. So just be mindful of that. Here's what I would tell you this. Just remember this overarching point. You are in control of your credibility. Do everything you can to protect it. You can't control whether you get medical insurance. You can't control whether or not a judge will send you to see a doctor. You can't control if Social Security will ask for additional information from somebody. There's so many parts of this process that you can't control that you probably feel very helpless when you're going through the disability process. You can control your credibility. Do everything you can to protect it. And if you're not sure if a circumstance that you're involved in that dictates being in terms of being informed of the Social Security Administration, you need to look for a representative to educate you, or look to have a representative represent you, so that this way you have someone who can make sure that you are doing everything you can to preserve your credibility. All right, everyone. Tune in next week as we talk about unique situations that may affect your disability case. And our first circumstance, we'll be talking about pregnancy right here on Q&A, Social Security Disability Today.
Good evening, everyone. In the know. Tony Reeves, fired. Following the news in any way, shape, or form. No shortage of things to talk about. What did